Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Mr. Barry Thomas yet again on Health Matters, and my name is Jacqueline Harvey. Today, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about menopause and andropause because for our generation, there are a few changes going on. And I wanted to ask Barry, I invited Barry to talk about andropause and what he's basically, from a health point of view, what he's heard on the season, what he's experienced with men, because obviously I see the opposite side of the issue from a lot of women, and being a woman myself, having gone through to menopause, I wondered what's going on out there with regard to andropause for men, and I'll go back to women. Good afternoon, Barry.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We're delighted after a very good episode that we talked about health and seniors and all our nonsense that we were doing when we were younger. It's great to have you back, and it's great to have you talking about this subject, especially within the community, because I think this year in particular, we've all heard various stories or had partners or situations going on where people, their hormone changes. That's what we're talking about today. Menopause and andropause, hormone changes as you get older.
Yeah.
Can we start with you then, Barry? What hormone changes have you experienced? Because
Well,
guys don't talk about it that much, do they?
guys don't talk about so much, number one, and particularly in our community, everything is a secret. And so
Which
they're
is not
afraid.
helpful.
Well, it isn't helpful because I always think that sharing is
Yes.
is helpful to everybody, because number one, you then realize you're not alone, and then you're thinking, oh my God, they're going through that as well.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
so it actually brings people together. But part of our community is that everything is a secret, and you don't talk that out in the road, and you don't tell.
Yes,
So
that's right.
but we're
This,
all going through the same thing. Well, it's actually andropause,
yes,
and which is particularly pertaining to men.
yes.
I've reached 60, and
Yay!
yeah, of which you were there to
You're,
celebrate with me. Thank you.
yes, that's right. Yes, I
Yeah.
was there to celebrate.
And to be honest with you, my experience is that yes, I do get a bit lethargic.
Yes,
I do get a
yeah.
bit lethargic.
You've noticed a change. So you have
I've noticed a
noticed there's a
change. And
change.
as much as people want to say age is nothing but a number, yes, it
Yeah.
is a number. But the age of 60 is not the age of 30.
Yes,
Your
yes,
body tells you that. Your
absolutely.
joints tell you that. And then you start to get a few niggles that you didn't have before, and you realize it's actually pertaining to hormonal changes.
Yes.
Now, more often than not, this is only attributed to women. You only ever talk about it with women.
Yes,
But the same hormonal changes happen with
with
men,
men. Yeah.
which have consequences.
Yes.
So, it's sometimes it's tiredness, sometimes it's lack of self-drive, you know, it's just a decrease in the lower levels of testosterone.
Yes. So your andropause is driven by dropping testosterone levels,
Testosterone, yeah.
progesterone as well, and
To a
estrogen.
degree,
Yes, yeah.
but
Yeah,
predominantly
brilliantly
testosterone.
testosterone. But men, I suppose that's one of the myths that we're led to believe, especially when you see some celebrities having children in 70s and 80s, that men can make
Well,
testosterone till the end of their days,
it's
you
not
know.
necessarily about being able to act. That's how I have to say it. It's not necessarily about being able to act, but it's
Yes,
about how often you can act.
yes, yes, that's right.
That is really it. And I guess it is for some pertaining to the sex drive as well as their all-round energy. You find
Yes,
as
that's
you
right.
get older, you haven't got the energy, if you want to be honest. You haven't got
Yes,
the energy to do the things that you once did. Or if you do them, the after effects
yes.
and recovery take much longer.
Yes. So
So,
so you find, and I think that's similar with women. What women find, well, it hits us quite in a big way, once the hormones start to shift. So when did you start? For women, our cycle of this change in all hormones, the change in our hormones balance starts, it can perimenopause, we calls it, and that can start in your 40s, or as today it's getting younger and younger, where the
Yes,
drop in estrogen and progesterone is coming in women in their 30s. and
absolutely.
and this perimenopause, that they use the word menopause, but the menopause only is reflecting a period of 12 months after you have not bled, you've not had a cycle for 12 months. But in actual fact, they're talking about menopause like it's an ongoing thing. No, there are 3 stages
Of menopause.
to get to that
Right.
12 months of not bleeding. So you've got perimenopause, you've got the actual 12 months, which is the perimenopause is what the doctors are trying to treat, which is the hot flushes, the disorientation in the brain, the lack of not being able to sleep, massive drop in energy, that
Yeah.
can affect your ability to go to work, even, which is if you're self-employed or you're working for an employee that's performance rate
Yeah.
related, it can have a massive impact on your life. It affects your relationship because you have physical symptoms in your body. You've just said there about how you can perform, the regularity of what you can do, maybe sexually, or your general energy, sex drive can plummet. For women, they might find that they can muscle up a sex drive, to do something, but then the function of the vagina can be basically make it a horrendous experience, to the
Yeah.
extent that it can actually split up marriages and relationships
Because
because
it's
the
not
different, yeah,
stimulated in the same way, and
no,
it
there's the
goes from being
lubrication.
pleasurable to painful.
Yes, yes, yes. What was always pleasurable, all of a
Yeah.
sudden can become very painful. And if you've got 2 people at different levels in their cycle, how do you really, you
Yeah. I
can't
mean,
have secrets.
well, for men, I think really and truly it's supposed to, or it is said to start from late 40s to 50s.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. But yes, it could start in some people in their 30s, just as with women. Because as you see,
Yes, yes,
some
that's
women are
right.
saying in their 50s, well, I haven't gone through it yet. It hasn't
Yeah,
started yet. And then there are
yes,
others who are in their 30s, late 30s, being told, well, yeah, I'm going
yeah,
through this now. So
yes.
it's exactly the same. It's really an individual thing. Um, but
But
with men, yes, it can start late 40s to 50s, but it could start earlier.
and then we have a situation where we're post menopause. And that is actually going to be, so if you imagine the period of the 12 months where you don't bleed and then you're menopaused, and
Right.
then what happens to you after that? You could be 50 something. You could live another 50 years without any hormones in your body. So you are post, or so that's maybe 50 to 30% of your life. You don't have hormones in your body, or they're reduced and incapacitating you and contributing to you actually aging. And for women, I think it's contribution to their death, actually,
Well,
which is not talked about. This
yeah,
is another one of these secrets that is not really talked about. And I'm quite passionate about that, that in all our time at school, in all our so-called education, in sex education, biology, they do not tell you a thing like you are going to be going through a process where your body is going to start to disintegrate and die because of a lack of
lack of
hormones.
hormones. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you're going to become, the osteoporosis, the muscle disintegration, the inability to cognitive function is going to reduce because we get this big thing called brain fog. I don't know if men get that. Have you
yes. Well,
have
of
you
course,
heard?
yeah.
But would a
Men get it
guy?
as well.
But would a
I,
guy
to be
actually?
honest with you, some men I think have got it in their 20s. brain fog, but that's another story. But for
But that's
another
why I
show.
said, would guys really admit that they suffer from like brain fog, these similar symptoms to women? Do
You
they
know,
talk about
I
it?
don't even know if it is guys in
Mm,
general or the mentality of certain individuals.
mm,
As I say, when things are going wrong with you, talk about it. I am
yes,
one that I am at my doctor's surgery if I feel so much as a tingle in my little finger, because
yes,
it's something that I've never felt before.
yes,
As you age, you realize these things are happening. They happen and they give you signs. It doesn't just become an acute
yes,
situation
yes,
when you're
acute.
completely
Yeah,
debilitated,
yes,
right? So for
absolutely.
me, the minute you find any kind of function change in your body
Yes,
for a certain age, to me, it's an alert. You let your doctor know. It's
yes,
him then to advise you because he's the expert
yes,
to say,
yes,
well, no, it's nothing serious, or, well, this could be the onset of whatever. And more often than not, you see people end up with major health issues
yes,
that could
related.
have been avoided
Yes,
had
absolutely.
they acknowledged that there was a
Yes.
change with what was happening with their body, and let the expert know to advise them.
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, that advice that you've just given there, in an ideal world, would be the correct thing to do. But what's gone on, especially with the NHS, and the restrictions going on with appointments, GP appointments, and all sorts of stuff, and the actual way that doctors are trained about these specific, I think we must be the first generation, our generation, or the one before, where they actually started really looking at these
That's
hormone
specifics.
yeah,
Yeah.
at these hormone changes and trying to do something about it. I know in the 60s and 70s they brought out HRT. So HRT was, but it came from an animal source, which was believed to be causing cancer for women. They gave it to everybody who had stopped bleeding or was having symptoms, up until people in their 70s and stuff. And it was very high levels of animal estrogen and stuff, and it didn't work. And that
Right.
gave a really bad reputation, which people can be very wary of, which is one of the reasons why they may not feel confident about going to the doctor about that type of thing. And then on top of that, so there's a confusion about what can be done about hormone imbalance as we age. And so there's a bit of a confusion there about what should be done. And then there is a big fear that, people from our community don't get served very well within the NHS and stuff like that, especially with the new reports about the way pregnant women are being, women of colour are being treated within the NHS system. The amount of babies that are being lost, the experiments that have been done on, well, I would say wrong medication given to people of our community since the 60s and 70s, that has resulted in, um, excess deaths or unnecessary deaths that have been proven.
Possibly. I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience.
Experience, yes,
And to date, I've had an exemplary
yes,
service from the
yeah,
NHS. I think a lot of it is to do with how you present the problem.
yeah,
And when
yeah.
they know that you've got people that care about you,
Yes, I
there's
think that
also
was
that.
that was a big thing that came up in the studies, that if if people went to the A&E or to hospital and there was someone with them that was articulate and knew, and that was taking almost responsibility for that person as well as the person that was ill, that they got a slightly different treatment in the NHS. That did come up actually as a point. But to go back to the treatments and what's available, there has been a lot of information apart from HRT, which I'll go back to a little later. have you, do you know of men that have gone to their doctors about the issues to do with, suppose, I would imagine, erectile dysfunction or
Well, I
poor
guess that
low
could be part of
testosterone?
it. It
Yes,
could be
that's
part of
right.
it for some
Because
people.
yeah,
But then you realize that you can get that for lots of different reasons that
yes,
aren't
that's right.
necessarily andropause related.
Yes, that's right.
One of the cures is, as with women in HRT, there is hormonal replacement available for men.
Yes, there
um,
is.
to get.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, there is that. But I guess, as we spoke about in the previous episode, diet as well is
Yes. Yeah.
related.
Yeah. There are
Um,
quite a few lifestyle factors that can impact on how balanced or imbalanced your hormones are.
Hormones are in
Yeah.
later life.
Yeah.
From the things you drink to the things you eat,
Yes,
all
that's
of
right.
those are related.
Yeah.
And I guess you have a certain kind of responsibility to yourself. As we said in the previous episode, your health
Yes.
is 100% your responsibility.
Responsibility.
You,
So
you take the responsibility for making sure, well, it's not necessarily being as drastic as food combing, what you call food combing, when you go
yes.
through everything and say, well,
Yeah.
this is good, that's bad. But, eat things and see the effects that they have on you
Yeah.
after a few hours, or how you feel. And
Yes.
those are things that you can take on board for yourself, apart from hormone replacement, to
Yes.
see how things are affecting your body.
Yes, because I think with your hormones changing, it's affecting you holistically. It's affecting your mind, body, and spirit. And all of those aspects have to be dealt with, as well as maybe hormone replacement. You have to deal with your food. You have to look at what if you're doing exercise, because exercise has been shown to help with the hot flushes, with the
Yes, it does.
depression, and all, and with raising, serotonin, dopamine, and stuff. And
Serotonin.
yeah, so that you have a bit more of a positive outlook on life. But one of the biggest things that has been helping, especially recently, which the NHS does have availability on, is body identical HRT now. We didn't have that
Right.
before. We do actually have body identical HRT, which is made out of the very things that some of our community foods, which is, for women, it is wild yam. That is estrogenic. There are foods
Right.
out there that are estrogenic,
Yeah.
but you can't take them, the food themselves. I think the Africans, because they have more estrogenic foods, they're they're telling me they're not even experiencing menopause. 60, they still bleed, they
Yeah.
do not have symptoms, they do not
Well,
experience.
to be honest with you, I don't
Mm.
think that's anything new, because if you look at
No,
our
well, it is
parents'
new.
time,
Yeah, in
look
Western
back in our
medicine.
parents' time,
Yeah.
and you were saying, well, yeah, your grandmother had children when she was 50 something years
Yes,
old,
that's right. My mum
right?
had my younger sister, late 40s, early 50s, very late.
Exactly. So you realize that that's nothing new. It
Yes,
wasn't, but it just wasn't spoken about.
yes, absolutely. So our foods, again, we go back to our cultural foods. They're very helpful in certain forms, but we need them. They now make a cream, which is made out of wild yam, and you can do it on the NHS. You can do it privately. That will replace
The estrogen.
the type of estrogen that our bodies need over the next 20 or 30 years, because if we don't have estrogen and progesterone in our bodies, whether it's bio identical or body identical, and people might say, oh well, it's artificial, it's synthetic. Everything is synthetic that is not, that goes to a lab or goes to anything.
Exactly.
It's all unnatural, but it's coming from vegetation, which is linking to what we eat as food. That's all. They've shifted the compounds about. They literally pound it down, make it into a powder, mix it into a cream or a gel that can go into your body and give the body, or give women, the estrogen that they need to stop all these hot flushes, brain fog, disintegration of the bones and the muscle system, and all stuff like that, in the same protective way that testosterone does for men. And instead of masking it over with maybe Viagra or one of these other products that are out there, they need to look at what is really going on with their hormone profile, like you said. But the NHS might not want to test for testosterone. I don't know. Have you had or know of people that have had tests?
I don't know anyone that has had
The
that
test.
specifically, and I haven't. But
Yeah.
I know that things with foods,
Yeah.
oyster, seafood, a lot of
Yes.
vegetables, and things like chicken livers,
Yes. Yes.
those
Yeah.
are the things that are great for andropause.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So, the thing is, the knowledge is there, it's out there, and it's available.
Yes.
And it is people's responsibility to look after themselves. And now that the research is done and it's available, look up about these things. I'm not saying that you should self-diagnose, but I
No.
don't think that checking up on things as simple as, well, what dietary requirements help my
Yes.
situation,
Yes.
are any harm,
Yes.
do any
But
harm.
no, they won't do any harm whatsoever. And hormones or the endocrine system is a sophisticated system to balance in our body. So you might find, and that's why sometimes if you can afford it, it's worth going private to a doctor that specializes in these things, because they will look at balancing all your hormones, what they should be for your age, or to relieve your symptoms. Because I know that, so, you'll get, I experienced it myself, when I was perimenopausal, I'd be trying to go to work, Barry. I'd have a shower, get out of the bath, try and put on my clothes, and just complete sweat. I just have to wait and wait and wait for that hot
Until that
flush to
cycle passes.
before I could even go to work. You have to explain that to an employer, and which is why the government has made more initiatives, and people should look at at work, what initiatives or what things
And yeah,
they've
the
got
thing is,
to
what I
deal with
find
this.
really ridiculous, I will say, is that the government has to do this, because
Yes, yeah.
every business is run either by a man or a woman
Woman, yes,
who
by
is
human
going
beings.
through this. So
Yeah,
they would understand. I mean, a friend of mine, her periods were so bad that she actually had to have it written
yes.
into her contract,
Wow.
because once she was going through her cycle, she couldn't move. She was just
Yes.
in the fetal position in a
Yeah.
ball in her bed. That's all
Yeah.
she could do. But
It's
why does it
shocking.
take the government to have to make an initiative for employers to understand this, when employers
Because time is money, and for them, defective or poor performance is not a reason to have, even if it's for health matters, that companies just don't want to pay for it.
yeah, but
They
that's what it
literally,
is.
they
That's
literally
exactly
don't
what
want
it is.
to pay for it. So again, it comes back to something that we said previously. It's our responsibility to try and help ourselves by looking into what is going on from the time you're in your 40s. I cannot express it enough. You should be going to investigate your hormones to see how they're laying out, whether they're dropping, whether they're fluctuating, because the cycle might start fluctuating, what symptoms you're having. Unfortunately, some GPs will say, oh, you're simply depressed, I'll put you on antidepressants, Joseph. And
Yeah.
to a certain extent, I can understand why they say that, because someone will be presenting in their surgery with symptoms that resemble depression. Actually, they don't want to get up. They're feeling they can't envisage anything good going on in their life, because that's a drop in estrogen and progesterone. They've got aches and pains everywhere. And they're getting all these different symptoms, and a doctor might say, well, I'll just put you on antidepressants.
Antidepressants.
But what
But then
actually
you
is
would
going
hope that the doctor, being the expert, would connect the dots and realize that the stage you're at in life,
yes,
what you're going through,
yeah, I
is
am telling you,
related.
if I hadn't experienced it myself, I would never believe it. But I went through exactly the same situation with my GP, because we have a GP practice. I have some very good doctors there, and they would not connect those dots until I went private, and then went back to them and said, this is the result of this. This is why I need to have this type of medication, or this type of help.
You see, now to me, that in itself
It's
is a
crazy.
concern,
Yes, it
because,
is. It's
you shouldn't have to be going to them to tell them their job. You
yeah,
go to the expert for them to
absolutely.
tell you.
I'm
And
very
again,
fortunate.
I'm very much one of those proactive people
Yes,
that
so am
I
I.
go in and I say, well, this, and this is the problem. You've given me that, that's fine. But what you've given me is not curative.
Yes, that's right.
Right? It's not curative. So what we need to do is find out what is going on with this, and this. And I
Yeah.
don't stop until we've gone through every investigation
Well,
from from
from east
up
to
to,
west, north to
yeah,
south. Yeah.
exactly, with from the
So
MRI right down, or from whatever up to the MRI. We're
yes,
going to find out what is
you
going
have to explore. Yes, and this is why I felt it was so important to have this talk, was because many people do not have the confidence, and they might be palmed off, because you and I have the confidence and the knowledge to a certain extent before we go to a GP about what, and we know our bodies so well. We know what is real and what is not real. And that was my experience, and it's been backed up within the Menopause Society and all these different women's groups and societies, that women have been not being served very well by the GP service. And by going through that whole process, I've now gone back to the GP, and I'm on good relations with them. But I had to go privately and get all that testing and everything sorted out privately, and even handmade medication, because private, they will handmade that HRT specifically for your
Well,
body,
that's wonderful.
you
But
know. But
my
not everybody
closing,
can't afford that, and so
yeah,
this
well,
is
this
why
is true.
we
But my
have to.
closing word is,
Yeah.
people, pay attention to what your body is telling you, because your body is telling you all the way along the process. Whether
Yes.
you want to recognize it or acknowledge it or not is entirely up to you. But your body is telling you. You feel that different ache and pain. You feel that different sensation when you do certain things. You realize that that wasn't there before.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
so it is really up to you to at least make the first process to
Yes.
your maintenance. I call it your maintenance.
Yes.
And then, your
As you age.
GP, the expert, is supposed to pick up the baton from there.
Absolutely. Barry Thomas, thank you very much for your input today on aging again, another topic, on our hormones changing as we age. Thank you very much for
It's
being with
always
us,
a
and
delight to talk to you. You can invite me anytime.
I will do. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Health Matters. I'm Jacqueline Harvey. You can email me on info@jacquelineharvey.co.uk or at info@cchlive.com. Speak to you soon.